Hello, hello, hello. It's funny. I can't even do it. Like I was gonna say, like how monotonous can I make my hellos? And I feel like I can't. I can't do it. There's this excitement. Let me tell you something. So here's an the FYI of the day. But this is like I have to admit this on camera. Whatever whatever befalls my evil. Judge me as evil if you will after I admit this. But so because I think if you judge me morally, it's anyway. The point is that you can judge me. I am evil. The point is that there's sort of this idea. Well, so I get like I'm sort of my body senses the sort of time to talk. Right, it's 5:11 thoughts, and I'm telling you, this is what happens to me. Generally, like this is what always plagued me. I start sweating, right? Like I literally start sweating, and it's like it's so weird because like I try, hair notwithstanding, I try to maintain a certain hygiene, right? So I'm not evil in that regard. But the point is that like there's this idea that like, well, what's this about, right? I suppose I don't know. Like to be honest with you, I don't know if it's I mean I don't know why this would be why we'd ask the question. First of all, first question today, do you guys get like this? Like, how do you guys do like preparing for like? I consider this public speaking in a way, right? Like, I don't know if this is truly public speaking, but first question today, because I am actually very curious about this. How like do you guys get like where you're like you get like really nervous when you public speak or just peek into a camera that you're gonna sort of put out there for the world to see, like why would the world want to see me? Am I evil? Am I evil? Right? Maybe that's what we'll talk about. I don't know. We might talk about, but first question for myself to answer is, how was my day? Right? And I have to say my day was okay, right? My day was not bad. It was day two of training the man, right? The man. I'm just kidding. But, day two of training him, and so it went well. It was not bad. It was easier because, like I said, I think we were more in tune and everything. But he made two comments, and I'll try to address them now. We might go a little over because I don't know where this is going to take us to, especially like in the status of my status as a good or evil person. I don't know, but so the point is that like so the first comment he made I really want to talk about the first comment. I might talk about the second one because I think the second one's maybe even more interesting. But so he made a comment. I was showing him how we do our RFPs, right? I was showing him how we do the RFPs. We follow a template, right? And you do your research, you sort of put in this stuff and this stuff. And he made an interesting comment. He was like, well, can't I just make this up, right? It was a fax, right? I was telling him, you gotta find the facts, and he was like, well, what if I just like made up the facts? And I was like, what? You making up facts? I was like, what? And it was interesting because it was like it never occurred to me that people could make stuff up. And I suppose it's interesting because like, and I guess I just want to talk about this because it is interesting, kind of like sort of like what's made up versus non-made up, right? And I was like, because for me, like I will admit, regardless of whether I'm evil or not, I probably am a slave to Google, right? I probably am a slave to Google. Like Google, imagine like because people talk about like sort of ad clicking, right? Like Google ad clicks. You click for the ad, and that's sort of what how the revenue's made, right? But really, if you think about it, really, like imagine like an revenue per search, right? And like for me, like if I don't know something or something doesn't come to mind, I just right away I gotta know, right? And I've always I told myself that there's something about the efficiency of it, right? So it's sort of like, well, if I don't know it, I have to look it up, right? But at the same time, it's sort of like there's the idea that I have to know it, right? And it's sort of like, well, no, just make it up, right? Like like just like make up stories about yourself. I will say I used to have a friend who would always make up names for himself, right? And naming stuff is actually one of my hardest things. But it was just, and I just thought of like how like striking it was, because I think we take for granted that like things have to be, there's a certain level of like, well, things have to be truthful. And it's sort of like, well, no, it's not truthful. You're just being, imaginative, right? And it's sort of like, well, and plus, there's two things to it, right? There's, first of all, like, well, you're being imaginative, but secondly, it's sort of like, well, no one's actually believing you anyway, right? Like, it's sort of like, I feel like imagine like, look, here's an imaginary thing. Imagine that you were the only guy who like took stuff literally. Sometimes I feel like that, right? Like, so now that, and if is that what makes me evil? I don't know. No, but I don't know. We could go around and around. What is your conception of evil? Do you get to decide it? Do you sort of feel evil, right? We think of evil as, I mean, I know that like, it's sort of like, oh, do not bear false witness, which is not the same thing as actually like lying. But at the same time, it's sort of like, there's sort of this idea that, lying, we're taught lying is bad, right? Abe Lincoln, it's sort of like, I fought, or was it George Washington? There you go, right? George Washington or Abe Lincoln. Who was the guy who couldn't? George Washington cut down the cherry tree, right? He was the guy who was like, oh, I can't tell a lie or something. And it was sort of like, well, he's, look at Americans, right? Americans. But it is interesting, right? And I think that Honest Abe or George Washington. What do we do? I don't know. Does anybody else? All right, so now this would be an example, though, of me going to Google. And it's sort of like, because, and you think about it, it's like, well, why are you going to Google? It's like, I honestly don't know. Like, I don't know if the wires got crossed or like whatever. But it is interesting because, it's sort of like, I want to know because, those are two different presidents. And it's sort of like, the idea that either honesty pervades both of them, and they were presidents, they were leaders, et cetera, or, look at these dumbos, like they're like trying to be like honest or whatever. It's sort of like, well, what is the value of honesty, especially in a world that, has no attachment to reality, right? Like the last of the real ones will be the most evil, right? I don't know. Anyway, but the point is, but here's a second point. He also made a comment, which I think is probably more valid in my opinion. I mean, if I'm being honest here, right, a little more valid, is that he made a comment about how I'm not very organized. Now, this is something I will have to like, I will acknowledge, right? Because I do think that there's something to this level of like, I don't like to use planners, right? If I have to use like planners, if I have to use, stuff like that, I will. But I tend to live, I think I talked about a little earlier, like, living by the, writing by the seat of your pants or something, being like, but also like living by the seat of your pants. And that's something that I think because of that, there is not a need. And there's actually a very almost aversion to, doing planners. But I think it does hurt. Like if you're trying to write, right, you need to be organized, right? If you're trying, like, imagine if you're writing formally and you're trying to write like an argument, right? Sort of like you've got your premises and your premises need to be lined up, right? You need to put your bullet points or etc. Anyway, when I used to do that for school, I used to never be very organized. So that's a valid critique. And I think that it's interesting because I think there's something about, and it's interesting. I haven't really thought this through all the way, obviously, but there's something about the idea that I understand what I intend. And so because I understand what I intend, it doesn't really matter how I present myself, right? Like I'm not really here to impress you, right? And that gets to the value of reality, right? So in other words, like if I wanted to, like, in other words, like you can create a fantasy for yourself, right? But really the fantasy, can be in your head, and in which case the facts don't matter, right? The point about the honesty is that we're trying to communicate something to the person. And maybe we live in a world where everybody's on the same wavelength, but if you're not, that's where, things get, and it sort of needs to be either the words need to matter or the reality needs to matter. Preferably though, if we're existing in the reality should matter, and the words are just a way to communicate ideas that relate to that reality, right? So all of that to say, am I evil for not being organized? Probably. But you know what? The red man, yeah. Anyway, I wish you guys peace between the good and the evil. Someone's got to be evil, right, in this world. And yeah, I mean, me. I guess we'll meet on the metaphysical battlefield. All right. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm probably more. Yeah. All right. See you guys. Bye.